Hi, and welcome to a second edition of Rustic Race Reviews. We are here in New Hampshire, and we have just finished White Mountain, the half, and we are going to get started reviewing. This is a local race here, and let's go ahead and knock it out.
So I'll go over the swag that you get. Millennium Running is the company. At check-in, we got us a nice string backpack from Millennium Running. And then you got a long-sleeve hoodie t-shirt with the White Mountains Triathlon on it. Cotton. I'm not mad that this is cotton.
No.
I mean, I might have preferred it to be technical, but I'm not mad that it's cotton. That's fine. I mean, I've never gotten a hoodie
shirt
t-shirt.
Before. This is the very first hooded t-shirt in my collection. So
how about that? Check-in was so. Mind you, this is a relatively small race. In the half distance, so the 70.3 distance, around 200 people. Is that what it was?
I saw 373, but I don't know that all of those numbers added up. So yeah, it could be that they started, but small, less than 300 people for certain.
Now the thing about this race is they do the half 70.3, they do an Olympic, and they do a sprint, and they do them all
at the same time
on the same day. They started the half first in the swim, and then they started the Olympic in the swim, and then they started the sprint. So it kind of made it where, more people got on the bike course, and then more people were on the run course. I mean, it was a pretty creative way to get in 3 different races.
It was clever,
and still, not have use the roads for the right amount of time.
Yeah, they had 1,000 numbers, but they didn't. That was not 1,000 people. So I think they had a pretty good separation between peoples. And so I'm certain that's where we're getting confused on the number. Let's just say your sprint started at 600 and went up to 999 or something, and then your other one started at either 300 or 400, something like that. So the Olympics started there, and then the half, of course, started with number 1. The layout was very interesting for the bikes, right? So bike check-in.
Yeah, it was pretty creative.
We've not had this before. They started, so looking at the rack, they started left to right with number 1, and then right was number like 35 or 40. So it was 1, and then the next one back was 2. It was all the way up through transition to number 13, I think.
So it was the left side of the rack. So every time a rack changed, that's where. So basically, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to how many ever racks they had.
Yeah.
Then they started over, and 14, 15, 16, and then they started over. And how they entered you into the swim was if you were number 1, you went into the swim first. And they did that by age group. It was a rolling start, but it wasn't self-seated. You went in there, whatever your number was, that was the order that you went. And they only let 1 person in every few seconds. So, Ironman does 3. They only did 1.
But Ironman's getting 2,500 out, and these guys.
Oh, yeah. No, I liked the way they did it.
It was what? How long after it started were you in? It couldn't have been 6-7 minutes.
Yeah, just a few minutes. I mean, Sam was number like
24, I think.
And I was 67. So it was just a few minutes after he started that I started. I mean, it went by pretty fast.
It did.
I liked it. I mean, I guess the best way they could have done that is the fastest swimmers go in first, and then you should peel off the bikes off the rack. But the only way you can do that is if people tell you the time up front, and even then, people are gonna misjudge what time they would do on the thing.
Yeah.
So how they did it was fine. It was pretty creative.
It was small enough that I didn't get swam over. So I didn't really have any problems. So this was fine.
So I guess let's just go ahead and go straight to the swim, and we can talk about that because it was windy.
Yes.
And apparently that's unusual for this race.
The locals that we talked to were all very upset. I wouldn't call it white caps, but certainly
it was wavy.
It was wavy.
Yeah.
And it was not beach wavy, where you have kind of a long interval and you can get accustomed to it and work your breathing out. This was very short interval waves. I didn't have any problems breathing. I coming from swimming at the beach, this didn't give me any trouble at all. But the locals that I talked to were not happy with it. And so they said typically it's very glass, great swim. Just whatever the weather this particular day didn't work out.
So it's a 2-loop course. You go out, over, back, and then you swim. So some 2-loop courses you'll get out, like in Ironman Florida or whatever. But this one, you swam another buoy, and then you went out, over, and back. And when you came back on that third leg, the swim finished. So swim start over here, go, and you do the thing, and then when you finish, you come over here. I didn't have any trouble with that either. Probably the only thing that I noticed on the swim, the choppiness didn't bother me either. I don't like getting swam over, so I'd much rather it be choppy and not get swam over than for it to be super smooth and everybody's hitting me. I'm not going to say that you were by yourself, because I wasn't. And there were people around, and I would get tapped sometimes, but I didn't really ever get swam over. But for whatever reason, I was tracking it, and the wind was coming towards the swim start and swim finish. So when you swam out, you were into the wind, and that doesn't usually make that much of a difference. But for whatever reason, in this race, I was 10% faster going with the wind than I was going out. That's pretty. Usually, for me to be faster like that, it would have to be a river, or like at Ironman Eagleman. Yeah. You had kind of the current of that bay or whatever. So that was pretty. That was different. So that's how windy it was. I guess it was pushing you one way, and it, pushing against your head one way and pushing against your tail another. So you had sometimes even with a swim, you can take advantage of a tailwind.
I'd buy that, right? If you had a 5% loss on the way out and really a 5% gain, so it looked like a 5% gain or a 10% gain on your backside. This is a smaller race. Ironman is very good about generally it's yellow and orange. And then the turns are red, and so you've got the buoys are set every 100 yards, and they're all yellow halfway, and then they're orange, and then wherever the turns are red, so you know what you're doing. This was kind of an amalgamation. Still very large buoys, very visible, but they were various colors.
A lot of that had to do with the Olympics. So the Olympic distance, you swam out to the green buoys. The half, you swam out to the red and came back. Olympic, the green, and then the sprint was, I think they hit the first yellow buoys that we went out to. So that was part of it. I guess, in Florida, in the Florida Challenge, they had that too, because they had different distances. So, but yeah, that was kind of weird. You didn't really know exactly. We knew, since we were in the race, you just go out to the furthest buoy and turn.
And they were clear on that. So they did a pre-race announcement. Water was 70 degrees. So wetsuit legal race. It didn't feel too cold.
Was it 70?
That was what they said yesterday.
It felt colder than 70 to me.
It was not super warm, and we've been swimming in super warm.
Yeah.
But wetsuit legal race, so bring it. Everything else was fairly standard for me. You came out and did the transition. Run to transition was a little ways away, up a little hill.
A couple 100 yards.
They did great over the gravel path. They put down the green carpet.
Yeah, and
that is just so respectful for the athletes. When you have that kind of thing, some races just don't, and you're ouching over rocks. Until you get to the asphalt. And so, they had swept the asphalt, put the green things out, so kudos to them. They've done a nice job. Do you have a rating for our swim?
So, you got to take the weather out of it, I guess. It was 2-loop, which I'm not that big of a fan of 2-loop courses, but, you couldn't, the size of this pond or lake or whatever, you couldn't have done it in 1 loop. I'll give it a 5.5, and that's not taking into account the weather. That's if it was perfectly glass, I'd still give it a 5.5.
Fair enough. With you, I think it's a 5 for me. It's above average. There was nothing special about it, but I'd say I get your 5.5. I guess I will go to a 6. Based on the number of people, was very nice. And they did not start the Olympic, which was after us, until after our time everybody was supposed to be out of the water. So I was, I'm long gone, so I'm assuming that the last swimmer had plenty of time. But the way that the times worked out, the last swimmer should have had time to do the 2-loop course and get out of the water before the Olympics started. So I really, I like that. So I'll change it from a 5 to a 6 with the number of people.
I mean, surely they had to limit it. Like I remember getting an email or something saying they only had so many spots left, so they know how many people can be in the race, and they just won't take that many more. I guess that was so with transition. One thing to think about too was it was 8 bikes per rack, and we haven't had 8 bikes per rack.
No,
we haven't had 8 bikes per rack with setup at transition in a long time. Mm-hmm. We'll have 8 bikes per rack where you have your clothes bag or whatever, but so it was kind of tight. It was kind of tight setting up your stuff. But the way that people peeled their bike off the rack, I never bumped anybody. I never felt like I was being delayed by anybody else. So that part was okay. Another thing too about the swim is they called out your name as you went into the swim. That doesn't happen at I don't know that's ever happened at any other race.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool that they said, hey, this is so and so going. So
cool enough.
So you get maybe you get a little extra bonus for that.
Okay. Yeah. But you still at 5.5?
I'm still at 5.5.
Okay.
But yeah, that was different. Cool. Yeah.
All right. So transition.
Yeah. Same. Talking about the way that you peel the bikes off. It wasn't that far. I mean, it was a couple hundred yards, and it was kind of uphill, but they had done the carpet, and so that was fine. So you run in transition. They did have swimming pools, like little kiddie swimming pools that you ran through to get the sand off your feet because there was some sand to eat. When you came up out of the lake, it was a sandy beach, and so you got sand on your feet.
That is a solid point, by the way, just for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting the pools out. It's a little thing that really makes a huge difference from us. Because you're not biking, and if you're putting your socks on, you have sand all over your feet.
You're not exfoliating your feet while you're.
So it's the same thing. I really appreciate them thinking through that from the athlete's perspective. Hey, what problems are they going to have? And by the time I got it, I splashed in it. It had a lot of sand in there, so it was being taken advantage of by the athletes. So kudos.
I mean, when you run through those things, do not sprint through them because you will slip and fall. I mean, once some sand gets down in there, you kind of it has a little bit of grip, but if you're hitting plastic, it's pretty slippery. So just, when you get up to it, kind of pause a little bit, step in it, and then step back out, and then go on to your transition. Transition, you hop on your bike. So the bike in and the bike out was the exact same spot. So if you happen to have a transition spot, which they assigned you, so you didn't get to choose these, or it was just luck of the draw. If you happen to have a transition spot real close to the in and out, then you didn't have to take your bike the entire way. So that was an advantage for whoever had those spots. I did not. I was way at the other end, as was number 1. So the guy that they felt like was the most elite male athlete was the furthest away from that as they possibly could. So that was.
Thanks for that too. Thanks for slowing him down. We really appreciate that. Anything you guys can do to make my life a little easier.
You hop on the bike, and the first 3 miles is straight downhill.
All right, hang on. Let's we can finish transition. So they also called your name out when you were leaving transition.
Yeah,
was cool. So you have a transition ranking, real quick.
Do we even rank transition?
I don't know. You got an inventive labeling technique. I think you can label this one. So
okay, so I'll give it a 6. I'm taking a little bit off of the 8 bikes per rack. If it was 6 bikes per rack, it might be a solid 7.
Yeah.
Especially with the announcing names and stuff. Yeah. But I'll give it a 6.
I'm with you. That was a 6. That was a really cool. I like the way they did the bikes. It's just something different. I'm taking a little bit away because the bikes were a little tough to figure out. You had to figure out their system. So maybe a little bit of explanation on their system before then. We had the opportunity to get there before race day. So we had checked out where our bike was. If you get that, go ahead and do it. Because people that came in on race day with their bike, so you get race day check-in, which is also a big plus.
Yeah.
I love that. There's no reason that shouldn't happen everywhere. But
they were wandering around looking for where their spot was. Hey, where's my spot?
The guy next to me was being really helpful, and hey, man, you're down there, kind of explaining how this works. So that was interesting. I'm with you. This is 6. So the bike.
Yeah.
On to the bike.
So let's. I want to explain to everybody something that we've come to the realization of. If there is the word mountain or the name of a mountain or something like that in the race, it's going to be hilly. So this is White Mountains, and the other race, the Blue Ridge. I mean, Blue Ridge is a mountain chain or whatever, right? So, or the Blue Ridge Parkway. I mean, it's on top of the mountains. I mean, it was
Epic
hilly.
Climb.
This
is a hilly race. Very, very hilly race. But fun.
Yeah, so the difference in Blue Ridge was they had what they called the Epic Climb.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. I mean, you suffered on your bike for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. I mean,
maybe an hour and 15 minutes. Maybe you're a little slower. I don't know. Let's not point fingers.
I don't remember what my time was, but it wasn't that great. I just remember that you suffered for a very long time. And then the rest of the race was just kind of rolling hills. This race, you had an epic downhill.
Yeah.
I mean, my first 5 mile split was 10 minutes and change. So that's averaging 30 miles an hour.
Yeah. I was saying.
And, you know, they did have what they called a King of the Mountain on the ride. That was at mile, they said it was mile 50. It was mile 51 and a half is really what it was. But it was a super steep. I mean, it was steeper than Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
But it was short. 3 minutes, 5 minutes?
It was not very long. I was not
less than 10 minutes for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to go back and look at the data, I guess, but it was a short, super steep uphill. And they timed you at the bottom, they timed you at the top, and whoever made it the fastest is King of the Mountain.
So, and not the King of the Mountain, it didn't last super long. It was just the steepest part. So then because you had some rollers, you continued to climb on rollers all the way back up to the top. So they warned us. They were very clear. And it was really interesting. They did their race day briefing that morning while we're getting ready to swim, which was very clever, by the way. That's when everybody's the most attentive. So kudos for thinking that all the way through. Hey, get down there a little early, and we'll go over this. And so they had said, people have ruined their races in the first 3 miles. Please be careful. This is New Hampshire roads.
And the roads were not good.
You have snow plows. You have, snow tires, salt, sand. The roads coming down there, I could pick a line. One time I looked down and I was doing 41. And so, if you've got some good experience, then or you're just reckless, you can do it. So be careful. Know that the roads are what they are. And the worst segment of the roads was definitely, for me, that climb and that downhill. That portion of the road was the worst.
I don't know, man. There were some parts of the road that just had these huge, 1 inch or 2 inch cracks going through the road. And if your tire got hung in that, I mean, you had to pick the right line because it'd tear up your wheel.
You definitely had to pay attention here. I talked to a local guy, and he said this is the nicest roads in New Hampshire, was what we rode today. So... for the most part, I didn't have any issues with the roads. I would call this better than Chattanooga.
No.
Sorry, not Georgia, Chattanooga.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm still picking on Tennessee's roads. This is a bunch of episodes later.
So for me, I mean, the roads weren't good. They were, I mean, I'm not going to say they're the worst roads I've ridden on, but they were much better than what I expected. I mean, we've been driving around Vermont and New Hampshire for, I don't know, a couple of days or whatever, and the roads suck. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Yeah. I mean, and so I'm imagining on the bike. I mean, we did 85 pounds on our tires. Mm-hmm. I saw 2 flat tires. Plus, I saw a guy that his derailleur was messed up because he changed out his cassette the night before the race.
Don't do that.
So first of all, don't pump your tires up to 120, 130 pounds. No. And second of all, don't change your cassette the night before the race. Just
ever.
Whatever you have, just work with it. If you end up having to walk your bike up the hill, then that's going to be faster than what he was doing, which was sitting on the side of the road trying to figure out how to fix his stuff. So anyway, the bike was brutal. I mean, I'm still sitting here. I'm fidgeting because my legs are all sore. We just finished this race a few hours ago, and it hurt. I mean, it was a tough bike.
I'm actually going to disagree here.
Wait a minute. What are you disagreeing with? I didn't say I hated the bike.
You just said it was brutal.
Okay, it was hard.
It was hard. There is no argument there. I'm sorry.
There were plenty of breaks. This was not soul crushing.
Yes.
The Blue Ridge was soul crushing because you thought you were at the top and you weren't, and then you had to keep going. This one, you went up hills that were relatively
hard,
steep,
hills.
but then you had a break.
Yeah.
And then you did another one and you had a break, and so that part of it, I do enjoy that. That's I mean.
So if somebody told me that this was a new course this year, that they had redone the bike course, I liked it. If I were doing a race in New Hampshire again, I would do this one with this bike course. So she said that they used to go through towns, and that was right. While we're talking about it, this is an open road bike course, and we need to absolutely make sure that we cover that. The roads were not closed to traffic. What they had done was just put us on back roads. So for the first portion of the ride, I didn't really see many cars, if any. But as of course the sun comes up, it's not that bad. But as you get later in the day, obviously more people are going to church. Or Saturday,
man.
So, hey, man.
They might be Jewish. They're going to synagogue.
It's not a synagogue, I guess. But yeah, people are getting up and about and around. Cars, however, were very respectful of the race. They did not have volunteers at each of the turnoffs, but they did have a sign just after the turnoff with an arrow pointing. So that didn't bother me at all. I like the confirmation that, hey, I know I'm going the right way and I can see the yellow arrow.
Once you figured out their sign system, because they weren't huge, large signs, they were yellow and they had an arrow on there. And once you figure that out, the thing that you have to keep in mind when you're in a small race like this is you might not have somebody in front of you to follow.
Yeah.
And so you might be out there by yourself and you might be wondering to yourself, am I on the right road? And they did have. I was going to pick on them until I figured out their sign system, and I think it was adequately signed.
I didn't have a feeling that I was getting lost anywhere along the way. With you, I started at number 24, and I was the 21st person to get in the water. And other than the people who passed me in the water, everybody else passed me on the bike. But it was still spread out. I was still alone for miles at a time. Even at the beginning of the race, and of course if you started number 200, then you were all alone for a while. So I really enjoyed I don't enjoy hills, but the views, the way they had structured the ride with the breaks in it. It was a hard ride, but that you would get up and see the views, and I liked that part of it. So it was a technical and difficult ride, not a PR ride, if that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking for the scenery, you're looking for something that's a challenge, you just, you want a fun race. I would call this a fun ride, even though it was difficult.
Okay. So give me a rating.
I'm going to give the ride, I got to give it 5.5 bananas for the road. So the roads lose points, we're in New Hampshire, and so you know what the deal is. Anywhere it snows, roads are not going to be good, so just prep for that. Take off a little bit for the police were more than adequate. Not having volunteers at the thing, I think you have to take off for. It's a local race, so we understand it. But all in all, pretty good.
Okay, I'll give it a 5.5 too. My takeoffs are going to be a little bit different than yours. The aid stations? So the very first aid station was at mile 23. And I only saw them giving out water. I guess it's possible that they were giving out. There's only 2 people there.
When I came across, there was Gatorade there.
Okay. They were giving away Gatorade at the other aid stations. But second aid station, mile 44. So typically you have an aid station every 15 miles. So you would have one at like mile 15, 16, something like that. One at mile 30 or so, and then another one at mile 45. So I figured that since they had it at 44,
Yeah,
they were just going to have 2 aid stations. It didn't make a difference to me because we carry all of our stuff on the bike anyway, so I don't even stop at those things. But for other people, they should know. But then they had an aid station at mile 51, so which was right before the King of the Mountain. So you had the aid station. You get a little something, and then you do the King of the Mountain. So they did have 3 aid stations. It was just kind of weird how they spread them out. That was a little different than what we would expect. I mean, the roads are not great roads. And they didn't mark any of the roads. And I mean, I don't really... You probably could have had all the paint in New Hampshire and still not been able to mark the roads.
All of the...
So, I mean, I guess I understand why they didn't mark the roads. But and I don't even think they probably should because there's so much stuff to mark that you're going to miss something anyway. So anyway, yeah, 5.5 for me.
Okay. So the battle? The run. The run.
No, you're already finished.
Straight over.
Finished with the race, man.
In my head, I've forgotten this run.
Yeah, silly. And
So this is an interesting one. This is the very first time we've had a 5 loop course. They gave us rubber bands in our race packet. We assumed they were unrelated. Apparently we should have paid attention to the materials because those were to remind you which lap you were on. So they gave you 4 rubber bands. Once the 4 rubber bands were gone, you were on lap number 5, and then you were done.
Which was really kind of a cool idea. We just had no idea that's what the rubber bands were for.
So that was on us for not paying attention, but a clever way of solving that problem of counting. There was only one, I don't know what to call that thing, chip tracking beeper.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, you passed it 5 times, so it's like there's 5 of them.
Yeah, so they kept track of everything fine. But yeah, so there was no way of telling you. You have to remember that how many times you've done this. So the rubber bands were clever.
Yeah, they were. I mean, if you didn't have a Garmin, I mean, we used our Garmin, so that was, we didn't have to keep up with the rubber bands. It wasn't a big deal, but not everybody's gonna have that, and so they came up with a solve. So that was pretty good. The run, since it was 5 loops, you had a good idea of what was coming up, and I usually use a run-walk cadence to kind of pace myself. I was hurting on this run. It wasn't hot. The temperature was actually pretty good, but for whatever reason, the bike had taken it out of me. And so I had my run-walk cadence. Usually I'll do like a 4-minute run, 1-minute walk, and that works, super well on flat courses. On hillier courses, you kind of have to pick and choose where you're going to do that. This one had a really long uphill. So it had a really long downhill and then a really long uphill, and it was kind of flat for a while, and then you did the whole thing over again 5 times. So it kind of messed up my cadence a little bit, but, we knew we weren't going to set a PR. It was, we've talked about it. It was kind of a mental thing that, it wasn't that big of a deal to have a great time in this race. We just wanted to finish, and we're super happy that it went off because, weather had...
Happy to be racing.
Yeah.
So that's always a plus. I will say the course was a little crowded for the first 2 loops for me. Just so you had sprint people, Olympic people, and half Ironman people all on the same course. Once again, it's still less than an Ironman. Most of it you're running on I don't know what to call that. It's not a golf cart path, but a fairly wide run path. But you're split. So you're back to a cone in the middle. And we ran 2 across. I think the issue was way less people. So when you ran 2 across, it would block up, the whole lane. But people could get around you very easily because there were not people coming this way very often. So, it's the same issue I've had with that kind of a thing the whole time. Hey, there's 2 people in front of me, I can't get around them, except without any racers coming from the other direction, I could easily get around them. So I didn't really have any problem getting around anybody. I didn't have any issues with this run course as it was set up. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The hills were awful. But, the path and the actual, track that they had taken was fine.
It didn't even seem to bother me, the 5-loop course. I mean, the 3-loop course in Florida was kind of, I didn't like that.
I did not like that course.
I think that was just of the number of people on the course. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's really all it is. And so, since this is a smaller race, you can get away with the 5-loop because you don't. And I mean, the sprint people, fall off. I think it was, what was it, 2 laps for sprint?
I thought it was, is it 1 for sprint?
I don't know.
2
Whatever.
for Olympic, I think is what it was.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And then, is that what? Okay, so 1 loop for sprint and 2 loop for Olympics. I mean, those guys fell off by the time we were on lap 4 and 5.
Yeah, it's just half
people.
Yeah,
Or the really slow Olympic or sprint people, which didn't, that kind of cleared out the course. So, for that, I actually kind of didn't mind it. So, like I said, because you could plan out where you're, since once you'd done it once, you knew where all the breaks were going to be, and then you could test that along the way. So that was pretty decent. It had 2 aid stations, so basically it had 10, right? Because you hit those 2 5 times.
Yeah.
So that was plenty. I mean, I don't think they needed to change that any. I didn't notice a line at the porta potties. They didn't have a ton of porta potties, but I didn't notice anybody. Maybe one person waiting for somebody else to get out, but so they had adequate. They had adequate volunteers. They had adequate services.
Yeah. The only no issues with the porta potties in transition. There was only 1 porta potty on that run course, and it was at that aid
was
station.
Was there no porta potties at the other aid station?
No, because I looked. I was one of the ones who had to use said porta potty. And so there was only 1, and it's at as you're running out, the very first aid station.
So how amazing is that? They have only 1 porta potty on the entire run course, and we never saw it backed up.
No. I waited maybe a minute or 2 max, not maybe a little over a minute. You know how race time is; it feels like forever. So maximum of a minute for the guy in front of me to go finish. No problems.
So that kind of covers the course. Let's talk about the finish line.
Oh, sorry. I don't think we've spent enough time with the hills of the course because those things were brutal. So please know that going in. You get past that first aid station, and there's what is that?
It's a steep down. You go up under. You talking about the tunnel, or are you talking about the greenway thing?
After that first aid station, the one at the cul-de-sac. That had to be what?
Almost
third
like
of a mile, maybe 44 of like fairly steep incline down. I chose to walk it. I just was not super comfortable. I mean, it looked like you could run it, and maybe if you were used to that, you could. But you got to the bottom of that. There's just a little flat, and then there's a fairly. It was a long incline, interrupted, with little breaks in there.
Well, maybe 3/4 of a mile. I mean, it was a long way. It had to have been more than a half a mile.
Yes, it was.
I don't think it was quite a mile, so I'm gonna say 3/4 of a mile for that hill.
Yes. So you finish that. You're on lap 5. You're going back towards transition, and
so we're looking at our watches, and it looks like it's going to be short, right? Because we were at like 12 point something, 4, 5, whatever. So we're like, wow, it's going to be 12.6. Oh, we're going to get out of this kind of easy. Mm-hmm. Hope that it's USAT certified for 13.1 because we needed to count. We were planning on finishing at transition. So, or maybe our watches were off. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
We get to transition, and there's an arrow, keep going, not too much further. There's an arrow that points away from transition.
Into the woods. Yeah.
And you're like, well, okay, I guess they needed a few extra steps or whatever, so they put the finish line over here. Well, then you go into that area and you hang a right, and it's not there.
No.
there's just an uphill dirt
uphill.
Yeah, and you're like, what in the world? And so you do that.
Get to the top of that,
and you make a turn, and it's another uphill. And you're like, we got in our 13.1.
Words were exchanged.
Yeah.
You finished this course on a half mile long uphill.
And it's a steep uphill too.
I don't. Had I known it was coming, I might have been happier, but I did not like it at all. It was a
so
surprise.
Now you know. If you're watching this before you do the race,
far, please pay attention. It is a half mile long, and it is a reasonable uphill. It is not short. It is not a nice little.
I mean, if you're digging deep, in transition to get your time or whatever, and you get there, you're going to be sorely disappointed because it's a tough road to get all the way up, and you kind of wind around and you go back behind another building to do the finish. And the finish line celebration was fine. I mean, they had it all set up fine. We weren't expecting that. We thought that the finish line would be right there at transition. Again, we didn't pay attention to the race materials. We're not always good about reading all of that good stuff, but
rarely good.
But anyway, we're talking about it now. That's why we get stories.
Yeah.
So give me a rating on the run.
I'm going to give this run out of 7 bananas, I'm going to give this run a 3.
Okay, so 4 bananas. We've decided that 4 bananas is what you would expect.
Yeah.
So anything above 4 is actually kind of a bonus, and so anything below 4 is
detracting from the overall race.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say this run would detract from the overall race experience.
So do you think they should change it?
I don't know how you do.
I mean, because the way they have it is, the sprint needs to be whatever it is, a 5K, and the Olympic has to be a 10K for it to even be an Olympic.
I think you're stuck. Yeah, I'm rating it a 3. It detracted from my race experience. I was not happy with it. So,
but there's nothing you can do to change it.
Yeah,
so that's just. I mean, so you liked the bike a lot, but
yes,
the run just took it away. Okay.
So you got your overall rating for the? Oh yeah, well, you got the medal. Hang on.
I need to do the run. I mean, I guess.
Sorry.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll give it a 4 as expected. I'm not going to say that it's going to take away the finish line was a surprise, and that was certainly a negative for me because I mean, like I said, I was already hurting on the run, and then just to have that, you finish and you're like, I'm glad this race is over. Where some races, we finish and we're like, oh man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
So that was kind of disappointing there. But they limited the number of participants. They had plenty of aid stations. And I mean, it was a different run course. I mean, people told us, hey, this is going to be a hard race. I mean, we signed up for it because we were trying to do Mont Tremblant the next day.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, I guess, it got canceled. So we're only having to do this one. So because we're kind of hurting, it was going to be tough to do Mont Tremblant.
We were getting on an airplane. And
so I'll give it a 4. I'll stick with that.
Okay.
So at the finish line, what you got was a medal. It's a big old medal.
It is a huge dinner plate.
They placed it on you.
Yeah, and they put it on you. Yeah, so that COVID rules, they've just been having to pick them up or whatever. But yeah, COVID rules don't apply. So it has the White Mountains Triathlon on the front, and then it has the Millennium Running, which is the company that runs it in the back. I don't know. This is kind of a clear blue sky deal.
Yeah,
so,
that looked like this one.
Yeah. So I'll give the medal a 6. I mean, it's not a unique like shape or anything. I mean, it's just round, but it is bigger big. and it's a nice medal. So
I like the size of the medal, and if I cut off my review here, I'm with you. It's a 6, but the strap says half Olympic sprint.
Oh, I didn't even pay attention to that. Yeah. So you don't even know
what you did. Yeah. So I get it. You can't have too many ribbons, although I think this could be reused. But I'm taking a point away for that. I probably would be okay with a half Olympic, but the sprint is not cool.
So half Olympic sprint.
So yeah,
I didn't even notice that. Good for you for seeing that.
No, it's 4.5. I noticed it when they were putting it on my neck. I saw sprint. I was like, what?
I was just glad the race was over when they were putting it on my neck.
Paying attention. So overall, you got a rating for the race?
So, for value, right? We kind of,
we need to discuss town too.
Yeah, these are cheaper. So you don't get a hat. You don't get a backpack. I mean, the string bag I would not consider to be a backpack. but you're not. I mean, it's probably half what an Ironman race is.
Correct. Yeah, it's much significantly more cheap.
So, but the race was tough. 5.5. I'll get a 5.5. It's better. It was better than expected. The roads were certainly better than I expected, only because we had been driving around. If you're coming up here expecting good roads, there's not good roads here. But if you ride around on one in a little while and then you go out there on your bike, you're going to be like, okay, well, that was better than I thought.
Better than the rest of the roads in the county.
It's well run. They had some innovative ideas on how to deal with some of the problems that they've come up with. So, yeah, 5.5.
Fair enough. I'm going to go 6. I would come up here and do this race.
Even with the run?
Even with the run. I think I had that much fun on the bike. The swim was fine. I think the bike is a blast, and I think the town, my cell phones, I have Verizon, and an Android phone would not work at the race venue.
Well, neither did you got Verizon.
I have.
We
both have Verizon.
We don't know if AT&T works or not. But yeah, no cell phone service.
No cell phone service at the venue. Bring stuff to do.
Yeah.
If you're watching.
I mean, it's surrounded by mountains. It's in this kind of little canyon thing, and
the views for me are what you do this race for. You're not doing it for a PR. You're doing it for a challenge. You're doing it for the views. So I'm gonna give it a 6.
No.
Sorry, we forgot to rate. We got. I don't know. Do you rate the city? Do you rate?
It's not even near a city. What city are you gonna rate?
Out in the middle of nowhere.
It is. I mean, middle of nowhere.
Cannon. I don't understand why they didn't have Cannon open up. They literally have a ski lodge next door, and they were closed. Why they didn't just open up a floor and sell some rooms. So I have an idea. Here's how you can make some money. Sell some rooms to triathletes for the race. That would have been cool because the race finish would have been right there and you could have gone back to your hotel room.
Taking a shower.
So I understand you're not going to fill it up, whatever. But certainly look into that. There is a revenue stream for the ski lodge. That could have been improved, but overall the area, you're out in the middle of nowhere, so you've got to come. You're going out to somewhere else to sleep. They did have 4 RV slots at the park, and 2 of them were full. So this is race morning, so apparently they either didn't sell 2 or 2 people didn't show up, but didn't look like it was that hard. Because 2 were empty, I'm assuming it was easy to get one. But there was no camping at the race site. So
yeah, no like tent camping or whatever.
So please stay tuned for our long race review where we will discuss our lodging we're currently situated in. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you do this race. I hope you enjoy it.